I'm doing great. I'm just so excited to be here with you. It's been a while since we've casted together. This season already kicked off last week. We had a lot of cool announcements talking about MagicCon Chicago coming up. We're going to have a joint play space with Birds of Paradise, so that's exciting. And we also talked about how the VML is going to continue going as the tournament, but as a larger organization, we're also going to be becoming a nonprofit. We're still waiting on that status to go through, but we will become gender inclusive gaming as an umbrella group. So that was a really exciting announcement from last week that, just wanted to talk about it and bring it up again this week. Why not?
Absolutely. The VML has definitely meant so much to so many of us. That is that wonderful inclusive space that we can all play Magic the Gathering together in, because that's what it's about, right? It's about the gathering. And the VML is what brings us together. So, this season, we did. Now, I want to clarify, we have nothing from the new set this week. During this week, we were told that we could not submit anything from murders this week. So again, you're not going to see any of that. However, we may talk about a few cards here and there. Is there anything from murders that has you excited, Misha?
Judith. New Judith. I'm very excited for her. Um yeah, there's her, there's I like the big mole, the aggro Gruul mole.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've got a few front runners in my mind. What about you, Skybilz?
I love Rakdos. I wish it was just a wee bit cheaper, but Rakdos is so cool and so frightening to go up against, right? I mean, it's one of those things where this is very much a removal happy format, right? We're going to see spot removal in particular. Now, I'm sure that there is a share of wipe decks out there. We've been talking about that all over social media about how many wipes. I've lost track of how many wipes there are in this format, including in the new set here. So again, just keep an eye out for spot removal. And again, just very excited to feature some of these decks. Is there anything else you would like to cover, Misha, before we dive right into these games? Very excited.
I think I'm ready to just get into it. Like, I
All
know
right.
Murders isn't live till next week. I mean, that's something to look forward to, but for now, let's just, get into what we've been doing, our typical standard, and see, what's going on for the metagame breakdown. Last week, we, had 5-color domain in the top spot, but Esper Midrange, overtook it. 5-color domain, that's still, up there going pretty strong. Rakdos Midrange also came up on the list. If I remember correctly, I believe it was Dimir Midrange was a little bit higher. We still got Bant Toxic, Mono Red Aggro, those are up there as well. So we still see quite a few of the same decks that we're going to be seeing from last week. The games last week, I don't think we actually had any mono red decks, and we have a couple of those coming up, which I'm excited about. I'm also honestly a little bit surprised that Golgari midrange took a little bit of a dive. We had two very strong Golgari midrange decks that performed really well last week, so I was kind of expecting that to be a little bit higher in the rankings.
Well, we do like to change things up in the VML, and that's the thing, right? One it can be one way another week and something entirely different the next week, which is something that makes the VML both terrifying to be in as a competitor, but also exciting because you never know what's going to happen next.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think we have any of the four-color Slogurk decks on coverage this week, but those decks were still kicking in there too.
All right, well, shall we take a look at our first deck of the week? And of course, it is you were just talking about this. So we have some Dimir mid-range going on here. And remember, as long as Shieldred's in the format, sorry, Shieldred will not be going away anytime soon, as much as y'all would like to think so. We also have just the bats. That's another thing. We're gonna have a very bad bat infestation anytime soon. And then, of course, we have Larsen's Invasion of Amonkhet as the cards to watch here. Overall, is this the run of the mill Dimir mid-range deck that you would expect, Misha?
Honestly, it's the invasion of a Monket that kind of surprised me. I hadn't seen that in many of the Dimir mid-range decks that I've been looking at. So when Dahlia was saying that that was one that she was really excited about and how powerful, I took a double look and I was like, okay, that actually seems pretty decent depending on what you end up milling and what you can turn that zombie into. That's not too bad, especially when you can use your shark land to mill some more and potentially get some other strong things into the graveyard and attack with it. So I was really surprised and I was actually kind of happy when she pointed that out when she was answering her questions. Also, I just wanted to say that I asked the competitors this week which guild they would want to be a part of. And Dahlia is a girl after my own heart. I struggle between the Golgari and Rakdos guilds, so, same.
Relatable for sure. I think we're all a part. I mean, so am I too, part of that Jund wedge, if you will, like
Mhm.
some member of that, right? So yeah, to Dahlia again, I'm so sorry about the pun. I know run of the mill, ha ha ha, invasion of Amakat. Amakat, I get it. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry at the same time. I always have to squeeze a few puns in there. Although that one was accidental, and her opponent. Let's take a look. Shouldn't be surprising here with me on the mic. We have some mono red goodness here, mono red aggro here. So again, play with fire, Lithomantic Barrage, Bloodthirsty Adversary here. I would argue also that Squee is still absolutely terrifying in this format. And then, of course, we have the Shivan Devastator out of nowhere. So, Misha, overall impression of this deck, especially when facing something like Dimir Mid?
Um, those lithomantic barrages in the sideboard, I think are going to be really important to come in. When I looked over at Dahlia's deck, a lot of that is blue creatures. So that barrage being able to up the amount whenever it hits, just because they're blue, is going to be huge in this. The play within fire, being able to go directly to face, I think is also going to be important. Trying to get past some of the larger creatures that Dahlia might have on the field. So I think it's gonna be an interesting matchup. I think it really is gonna depend on how each opponent curves out.
Absolutely, especially with the mono red. Once mono red starts going, it doesn't stop. Now, speaking of things that don't stop, here we go. We are going to roll into the action here. Round one here. Taking a look at the overall deck, we notice the one land special here going on in the mono red. Meanwhile, down in the Dimir, we have two lands, a go for an Urtai. Kind of a tough deck if you're the Dimir mid range. What do you think?
Yeah, that I agree with Dahlia right here in mulling that because there's just so many 1 mana, 2 mana creatures in her deck that she can't really be waiting till turn 3 or 4 to start playing stuff. So, yeah, she needed to get some of those things out, and she's starting with a reef in her hand, which is great for her to get that kind of mill later on.
So the one land special was kept here. Not a second one here. We do have the Monastery Swift Sphere special here. Play with fire here going hopefully into a land. We will see in a second here. Does not look like there's one on the top here because that is the only logical thing to be looking for here. As there is a draw here, plenty of lands here for Dahlia.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dahlia's gonna go with this island and bat. Take a peek what Kate's got going on.
Have the reveal here. Looking with the bat here, thinking about the adversary. Although the play with fire is tempting, as that is the only card currently in the hand that is playable with the one land here. So decisions here. The bat does take the playing with fire here as we go into Kate's turn. Down the middle with the swift spear. In
Yep.
for one.
I completely agree with Dahlia's take there, getting that bat, getting the play with fire with the bat. Right now, Kate is still stuck on that one land. That play with fire could have given her another scry and looked for, that second mountain. Right now, just usually when you're playing mono red, playing with the less lands, the better, but you typically need at least two to get started. So Kate's in a little bit of a rough spot. If she draws into that second land, though, I think she should be okay. Might be able to like claw back here.
All right. Speaking of which, we have a battle going on here. This is the invasion of Amonkhet, getting rid of quite a few non-lands on the top here. That invasion of Amonkhet just might end up saving Kate here from just reaching no lands, which would lead to an inevitable scoop. Because again, you do need that real estate to go on here. Meanwhile, Dahlia has different plans other than the life directly, and there is the second land here for Kate, really thinking now about how that invasion of Amonkhet is going to affect this match, Misha.
Yeah, it's kind of a difficult position for Kate to be in because you can lightning strike that bat. The bat has life link. It's going to make it harder for Kate to claw back if Dahlia keeps gaining that life. So, when you typically want to use a lightning strike to face, I think taking out the bat was the right choice. You get the prowess trigger on the monastery mint store, push in some more damage, and you're trying to prevent Dahlia from being able to flip that invasion. It's an interesting choice for Dahlia, though. Does she want to go with that second invasion, or potentially take out the Swiss sphere and could honestly just play the Kitesail Larcenist out and remove the Swiss sphere that way as well.
As Misha said, though, that wasn't a second invasion of Amonkhet up the top, but Dahlia is thinking very much in the tank here about the Larcenist, because again, there are a lot of decisions to be made here. The Larcenist or the invasion, Dahlia opting for a second invasion of Amonkhet here, as we get to see even further into both players' decks. Definitely a difficult. Oh my gosh, that is a third. We are invading Amonkhet way too many times here.
Is this just gonna be a mill game? I didn't know that was the strategy, but who knows? No, I'm just kidding. I think Dolly is going for the right move, getting that underground, having the river in hand, having the reefs on the board, being able to potentially push through and flip one of the invasions next turn, because I can't see Kate not going ahead and just attacking with that Swift Sphere. If the Larcenist does come out, that could take care of the Scoundrel, but I think at this point, you just attack um, with your shark land and flip one of those invasions.
Dahlia declaring pirates there for Cavern of Souls. So, surprise, surprise. I wonder what Dahlia is about to drop. Again, as a reminder, here at the VML, we do play with open deck lists here. So, that kind of gives an insight for Kate as to what potentially might be played here long term. As Dahlia is looking and probably thinking about the Larcenist here, but there are also those tempting, oh my gosh, going for the animated land here into Invasion of Amonkhet. That is quite the choice here and should generate some amount of card
Oh,
advantage here for Dahlia.
this is gonna be great because Dahlia was looking at her graveyard, seeing what was in there, what she could potentially flip this Lazotep convert into, and she's opting for the bat and going to take that Witchstalker Frenzy. As we knew, Dahlia could already see Kate, well, half of Kate's hand, so getting to peek and see what that last card was is huge. Because right now, Kate still stuck only on that 2 mana because don't forget, those invasions also make you discard a card or make your opponent discard a card. So there's just more and more card advantage coming on Dahlia's side. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Down the middle here for Cade, and The bat going to be blocking the adversary here, but this is going to be very rough with all of that life link going on here. This is a very tight spot for Kate, the mono red player here to be at, as that in second invasion of Amoket is about to flip over into the morph creature here as Dahlia ponders. See what I did there, blue players. Ponders what exactly is going to come up next. Potentially another bat, but nope, goes
I
for the
mean,
big one.
technically, is that another bat?
I mean, technically, yes, absolutely. I warned y'all, we would have an infestation of bats here, and this match has not disappointed.
Oh goodness, yeah. That Aquazot's getting milled. That was a good mill for Dahlia. And also just that double bat lifelink. This is gonna be a very, very difficult game for Kate to come back from, just in terms of the sheer card advantage and the lifelink Dahlia's presenting.
Barry Mastermind onto the field here as yet another invasion is about to get flipped over. I'm not sure if I've ever seen 3 invasions get flipped over, but here it is, folks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Dahlia does play the 4 of the invasion, so seeing 3 of them this early, that's impressive, especially since they mill both players. No, not having milled, 2 of them is kind of surprising.
Now, right here, this is poetic. Here comes go to the throat, go for the throat here. And there are 3 of them. Speaking of a 3 of a kind, there are 3 of them in Dahlia's hand right now. And that is another land off the top, which again is poetic considering that this did start on a land hungry mono red deck. And there's Shieldred.
Yep, at this point, this is lethal. Kate has no cards in hand and nothing on the board, so this should be game 1.
Wow.
That was a very strong curve out for Dahlia, and unfortunately, Kate just got that tiniest bit of mana screwed at the very beginning, which really threw off the tempo, and then with all that card discard, made it very difficult to claw back.
That was an impressive comeback indeed here. So, if you are the mono red player, Misha, what are you thinking needs to be done here going into game number 2, especially going first?
I am boarding in all of my lithomantic barrages because most of those creatures were, well, were blue or either a 1/1, those bats. So even if it wasn't a blue creature, the bats would still get knocked out with a lithomantic barrage. Um, I probably, I think the bloodthirsty adversary is just a little too slow. I'd probably considered maybe taking some of those out. Maybe cut down on. Um, I don't necessarily know if that many lightning strikes. I think I would swap out the lightning strikes for, or at least one of the lightning strikes for the lithomantic barrage.
Yeah, it does seem like Kate had a lot in mind when it comes to the side deck because there's a lot being swapped back and forth. Definitely Shieldred always taken into account. So you want to make sure you have a card that takes care of Shieldred. It's a very commanding card against mono red here. So I'm very interested to see how out of the gate the mono red deck is going to be here going into game number 2.
Yeah, electing to keep the lightning strikes in, damage to face is still damage to face, and it should take out the Kitesville Larcenist. So there is still that argument for those being very strong. Gonna opt to take out some of the Godric's. Those are a little bit hard to cast. They're 3 mana. Um, gonna go down a Swift Sphere as well. And taking out some Phoenix Chicks.
Yes, Phoenix Chick's getting removed here. That Urbrass Forge looks like that's going to be a very difficult card for this to contend with. But now we're going into game number 2 here. Now that is more an out of the gate hand here for Kate, the red here. And now also decent hand also here for the Dimir mid. But it's one of those like, what do you put back? The land base is a little awkward. It's a little
Yeah,
awkward.
I almost think I would protect the Mirex because it's colorless, and I think
Mhm.
I'd want to, probably keep my Restless Reef in hand. Yeah, that's what
Yep.
Dahlia ends up opting to do.
And of course, the classic mono red opener of the format, that is Kamado faces Kakazan here, going with the tap land here, going into the second turn. And let's see which creatures picked here. It is going to be the Monastery Swift Spear because why not? And the festivities is in the hand. We also have the Barrage as well here. How invested is Kate going to go? Down the middle for two here. Very tough decision here on that and the festivities.
Yeah, I knowing that Dahlia has the bats, I think it's wise for Kate to keep the in the festivities and the Lithomantic Barrage in hand. The Monastery Swiftspear is already getting that extra counter off of the Kamano Faces Kakazan, so it's one potential damage lost, but you're saving that for a potential target.
All right, that is the lightning strike, as Misha was talking about going to face. But then there is make disappear, where there is two land open, especially involving a blue. There usually is a make disappear here down the middle for five here, as this mono red deck is just exploding. But alas, a bat off the top here for Dahlia.
Oh, bats. Yep, the bat has arrived. Unfortunately for Dahlia, we know that Kate has a barrage and an into the festivities. So if she were to play the bat, it probably would not last long, and Kate would get back the other card that would get taken. So, but Dahlia is going to elect to go for the kite sail arsonist. I would assume the monastery. Yep, that mentor is now a treasure.
It is a very treasured card. Lots of folks enjoy their monastery swift spears here. As we are having a decision being made here, there is the lithiumatic barrage here. 4/5 damage, pays the word cost. That monastery swift spear hits the field, missing the prowess trigger here, though. Important to note
Yeah,
here.
it does manage to keep that 1/1 counter luckily since it doesn't exile it, and, fun fact, you don't actually have to pay the ward, those lithomantic barrages cannot be countered, so no ward has to be paid with them.
That is correct because ward is considered among the class of countering. So that is a very good point, something to keep in mind for sure. And we're looking at that trespasser, by the way, graveyard trespasser here. And
That
interesting.
yeah,
Yep,
it's a
absolutely.
good card because that just even slight life gain could be the make or break against a mono red deck.
All right, siren for the map token here. And now we have a very interesting decision that Kate could make here. Again, staring down the trespasser. And again, interesting to note again about the barrage, and it cannot be countered. So I'm glad you said something about that. But the festivities have been ended here. Whew.
Yeah. This is an interesting position for Kate because obviously that mentor cannot be if you block, that mentor is still gonna survive. So do you trade? And Dahlia is saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna trade."
Is it going to be more than that, though? That is a witch stalker frenzy here. Pays the cost of the discard, which, by the way, is absolutely brutal here. If you're in the position of the mono red player, that to pay that ward cost here. Interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it at this point, it's very close. This bat coming down, taking that lithomantic barrage, um, it's gonna be interesting because there's they're gonna be making, you know, they're gonna making some interesting choices just to survive, and never
Oh,
mind, it doesn't matter because that lightning strike, that will end this game.
can you see the future? Because oh my goodness, you were talking about the lightning strike going to face, and there it is, right there.
Alright, that's very, very interesting, electing to not just strike the face.
Yeah, nothing in hand right now. Let's see what the order of operations is going to be. We just up, yep, we're just going to face. It was just one of those, "Hey, I wanna check out your mindset here." Perfectly valid here, totally understandable, and here we are going into game number 3. Now remember, Dahlia does get to go first here on Dimir mid, and that is going to be a big deal, especially when your opponent is playing mono red. What do you side here if you are Dahlia, or do you side anything?
I
No?
think it's really interesting that Dahlia, I didn't catch it in the first sideboarding, but she took out 3 of the invasions and only left 1 in.
Hmm. Very interesting choice indeed here. There is the one land special again. However, there's two barrages here. Very difficult decision here for Kate.
Oh, yes, if I was in Kate's position,
Ooh.
I think I would risk it just because those barrages can take out so much in Dahlia's deck. I think a big point to make is that Dahlia has had to mulligan in both of the games. Kate did elect to go down a card, which seeing this new hand, I think I would agree that that might have been the right choice. Just making sure that you're gonna be able to play the cards in your hand.
Yep, and there we go. Kevin or Soul's going on, declaring a wizard, I believe, here, going for the Swift Spear. Now, again, you can't help but wonder, Misha, is that pretty big risk here? Playing a card like Sleep Cursed Fairy here, where it does take so long for that fairy to fully become, for all intent and purpose, animated.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we also know those lithomantic barrages, those just wreck your blue creatures.
Mhm.
So playing a card that's really slow that can also be taken out by a card that we know Kate sideboarded, we know that she brought that many in. So just because that's like the best card against this matchup, I don't know if I would have wanted to keep those fairies around.
The larcenist again creating treasure, which again, word presence very, very critical here in game number three, especially when you're playing against an aggro deck here. And that is a Shivan Devastator in a Kate's hand. And that treasure could be spent to pump up this dragon. And again, we were talking about it before that Sleep Curse Fairy still has a tiny bit of time still to become a fully blocking creature here. What does that Devastator mean for this board right now, Misha?
Oh, for the board, it's not bad. It can attack into that larcenist. It would trade with the fairy, however. Um, Unfortunately, we know that Dahlia has the go for the throat that can take the Devastator out. That cut down would not have done it though.
Nope. So here, again, cut down, go for the throat here. Very Dimir hand here. Again, Cavern of Souls declaring pirate now. So one is for wizard, one is for pirate now. And here comes the Sleep Curse Fairy. Now, the one upside of waiting long enough is you do get to untap it at will, which is fantastic going against this mono red deck.
Yes. I This is gonna be really interesting because if I were Kate, I think I would have saved my treasure one more turn, played the squee, baited out some removal, and then played the dragon probably this turn. But Dahlia just biding her time and waiting to see what Kate puts out before using the removal spells.
Speaking of cut down, we might be seeing it sooner than later as yes, here comes Squee.
Yeah.
And here
We
comes the cut down for the squee. Now that might be an indicator to Kate right there that if there is a go for the throat, that it will likely be used here on the Devastator. We're going to see if Kate interprets that read. Oh my goodness, here comes the control. That is a make disappear off the top here for Dahlia. Dahlia probably feeling much better about her position right now. And now, Misha, I can't tell which one's supposed to be the aggro deck here in the situation, as it seems like the Dimir deck is now starting to attack more, as both players are now at 10 life.
Yeah, this knowing what's in each player's hand, it's a little tricky because we know Andrea has that instant speed removal and the counter spells for what Kate has going on. So having more information, I definitely think Dahlia's in a better position. But if I'm on Kate's side, I'm looking at this thinking, I've got a pretty good chance here.
Yeah, again, that go for the throat and the make disappear, that just controls this entire board right now. And as we're about to see the go for the throat here,
hmm There's
now
yeah,
there's a thought going on here. With the frenzy, what are we going to see?
that sleep curse fairy is going to be taken out. But unfortunately, the make disappear will counter that frenzy.
All
Ugh.
right.
And at this point, Dahlia has enough land or enough mana to animate the land and attack in with it as well, going for 3, 6, 7, 8. 8 damage if she so desired.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough for the mono red deck to
Oh,
stabilize at this point because
9.
again,
Yeah, I miscounted. That shark's a 4/4, not a 3/3.
wow. So again, we do have enough of the lands here as well to be animated here. And again, just being in the tank here, that carefully calculated move here. And again, it's always okay to be in the tank here. Again, thinking more than allowed. You do have plenty of time here, although depending on what kind of deck you have, especially if it's a combo here. Larson is coming out just to be a creature. What?
That that's a very interesting move. Um, if I were Dahlia, I think I would be very concerned about those lithomantic barrages because that could potentially just be a board wipe in this state. Um, However, we do still have the sharks. I I think I would have probably attacked in with a shark just to get push that extra damage, but playing the more cautious route, putting some more um block or, attackers on board, making Kate have to spend any kind of targeted removal and still being able to push through damage next turn.
And yes, you were talking about the sharks before as well, and that should be just enough mana to push this into game. There it is.
Yep, that will be our match.
What a match, though, between these two decks. That was a fantastic game for both players. Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of it really just came down to how those decks curved out, and, it was that go for the throat, make disappear combo that I think really turned the tide in game 3 for Dahlia.
Yeah, again, when you get to the point when you're playing against mono red and you can actually go on the attack, that's when you know that you have secured the game. Because again, a lot of the time you're on the back foot, especially towards the beginning. So,
Yeah.
again, GG to both players. Well fought match between the two. We still have three more matches coming up here. So, let's take a look at our next round. All right, so this is something we didn't get to see too often. This is a true treat here. This is Gruul Aggro, and yes, we do have a Monastery Swift Sphere. Makes sense. It's an aggro deck. Into Gruul Aggro here, we also have a Picnic Ruiner, Play with Fire as cards to look out for. And just overall, this isn't something you would expect to see in Standard. However, this is the VML, and this deck truly proves that anything is possible here. What are your overall impressions of this deck, Misha?
I'm just really excited. Like you said, we this is not something that you see very often, so I'm excited to see some Gruul action. Usually it's just mono red, so and if it isn't mono red and it's Gruul, it's normally Dinos, but there's not really any Dinos here. So I'm very interested to see how this deck's going to play. I think more of those play with fires are going to be very key. And there's some Dreadmire's Oz that help push through some damage. So I think a lot of these low mana cost, instants are gonna be, integral to potentially taking this game home.
Yes, and I wanna drive attention here to, Oliver Reed's, remark here regarding what sets your deck apart from other decks, because 'cause we've been talking about that, is, the ability to catch people off guard. Well, you have certainly caught us off guard, and I'm really excited to see what this deck's going to play against, and her opponent. Oh, hey, look, it's Ash, and we are going to be having as the name of this deck is Boats and Bats. So again, Ash and Bats. Always a fan of Rakdos, as exhibited here. We have Preacher of the Schism, which is still, as of this point, remember we're not having murders out yet. The hot new card in most decks that utilize black, but that whether that would be Rakdos or Dimir here, and just an overall just really daunting deck here. You have the Tidebinders here. Very, very strong deck. What do you think of this one, Misha?
Yeah, I think having, the preacher having a big booty and death touch, I think is gonna really potentially hold back some of the Gruul, aggro, early game aggressive stuff until, you can kind of push through, maybe get those picnic ruiners online to get that double strike going. I think the Tidebinder is gonna be a very, interesting add, being able to counter some type of, triggered abilities. And then again, I'm a real big fan of the bats. Like every time I
Mhm.
made these slides, every deck that has a bat, and I'm like, that's a card to watch. That bat.
And again, it's like which one, right? Because there's more than one pretty tough bat here, but yes, that is the deep cavern bat here. Can be used in aggro, control, midrange. This bat really does it all, especially at 2 mana. And one more I want to shout out here. What do you think is the best card in this matchup? Ash says removal spells. We were talking about spot removal earlier, so
Mhm.
relevant. All right, well,
She's got a lot of removal spells. 3 go for the throats, couple cut downs, and then, not quite removal, but 2 make disappears. It's removal from, just not playing the game, so
yes, and also too, how about Urtai resurrected as well, which kind of is removal, kind of.
he does both.
Mhm. All right, well, let's see how this match goes here. Got two very different decks clashing. Who will prevail here? Looks like Ash is most likely going to be opting to go first here. Oh, hi, Kirby. All right, let's see what we have here. So, a very commanding starting hand here for Ash. Just snap keep here. Meanwhile, Olive's hand, kind of a risky one to take here. No red sources currently present here. However, there is the Thran portal.
Yeah, that
There it is.
yep, we've got red. Never didn't have red.
Never didn't have it. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, Ash's hand is it's interesting. I do love that, keeping that Gix, I think she, just drew into her second black source, so that's a little scary. Electing not to play the Schooner out. Schooner? Schooner, that's how you say that. That's the boat.
Need a lexicon on this one here because I have no idea either, if I'm being honest here. But again, you see 2 mana open, right? You have to think, go for the throat here, right? Especially, again, open deck list, thinking about how much Ash likes removal here. We got the Picnic Ruiner here.
Yep, and that's what that go for the throat's gonna take out.
Yes, yes. All right, on to Ash's turn here as there's going to be a third land being played here. However, will we see the schooner? I'm going to take the schooner approach here on the words, by the way, so we're consistent. We'll take the schooner or the Gix or hold back and go for the third here. Lots of choices here for Ash.
Looks like she's electing to keep that second go for the throat up and ready, just in case something else comes out that she wants to take out. Some we're looking over at the stuff that was in Olive's deck list. I know there's 4 audacities, so in some monstrous rage, the ire, like there's a lot of things that Olive could pump that scamp up with that Ash may want to react with immediately to take out. That I believe it's the Dreadmaw's Ire lets you destroy target artifact. So being
Mm.
able to take out something instant speed that gets ired, because that could take out the boat, I think that's really key here for Ash to be aware of and keep the go for the throw up for it.
Also, Olive here just amassing, I mean, amassing cards into that semi-exile hand slash adventure zone. There's a lot of zones going on here.
Hmm.
And yes, looks like the questing druid here, because again, you want to make the most out of this. Gonna go down the middle for one though first, just to experiment and see what's going on here. I believe that there is something suspected here with Olive, but Olive thinking about it, thinking about the rage, doesn't do it. And are we going to see the sacrifice here? No, but we are going to see the questing druid here again. That would likely go away if it is not played this turn. So again, maximizing that hand space. I believe the other questing druid is in the actual adventure zone, as indicated by those yellow flames there. Thanks, Arena, for indicating that. And right now, this field is looking pretty sizable. Cut down off the top though for Ash. That should help to ward and or maintain part of this field here. Still a tough board decision here for Ash though to deal with.
Yeah, they're Ash really did, mean it when she said removal spells are her best friend in this matchup. She's
Mhm.
got a handful of them. I'm interested to see if she ends up going with the cut down, if she ends up targeting the Picnic Ruiner or the Questing Druid. The Picnic Ruiner doesn't really have a chance to grow, but it can get double strike, whereas the Questing Druid could potentially get out of range of that cut down.
All right, and that is Ash building a little bit of the board presence here. Now, you were mentioning something about that big booty that is Preacher of the Schism here. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out here. And Olive here pondering her choices as to how to pump, going with the monstrous rage here that's going to pump up the questing druid. However, there are plenty of opportunities here for removal, as our big butts as well. Remember that is still a schooner vehicle in the background here. Pretty complicated board state overall.
Yep. That picnic ruiner now out of range for the cut down, but the questing druid for now is still cut downable.
All right, Picnic Ruiner swinging in is going to be go for the throat. All
All right,
right,
let's see if
so
Ash decides to block with the preacher.
yeah, the
Looks like
preacher or the schooner here could be a thing here. What is Ash more afraid of losing here? Blocking with the big booty that's the preacher now. Is Olive going to go for the 2-for-1 here? Remember, preacher does have that death touch.
yeah, unfortunately, I think trading off the preacher is the right choice for Ash, but unfortunately for Olive, it is a straight trade no matter what. Like it's not going to get trample, it's just going to lose to the death touch.
All right, so no proliferate here. Nope, just going to hang out still. And speaking of hanging out, there is another picnic ruiner on this side of the field here. And that
Oh,
is another go for the throat. Oh my goodness, look at the amount of removal here available to Ash early game as that cut down goes down the board here. And now we have a monstrous rage being played here to nullify the cut down. And now we're going to probably see a go for the throat here. And that is a 2-for-2 there. That is rough on both players here. My goodness, what a turn of events here for both players.
yeah, that's a little rough having to spend so many resources just to go one for one with each other. Olive has two creatures on board, but we know Ashlizzle has the Gix, it can crew the schooner, and the Fairy Mastermind can also come out too. So I think right now, I think Ashlizzle is a little bit, I think a little bit more favored currently on board.
Yes, there goes the schooner here, as that is a land off the top. But remember, that is one less land that Ash is going to draw here. And we also have the draw here. My goodness, just all of the value generation here. Ash being able to use every resource here available. And again, that Gix just allowing Ash to draw so many cards here.
Yeah, that the Gix Schooner, that matchup, that is a very, very strong wombo combo for being able to explore, get the lands off the top. If it's not a land, getting to take a look, potentially draw it with Gix. That's good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, to say the least. And that is another fairy mastermind off the top. Not only does Ash have a board now, she also has evasion with the mastermind. And again, these can all draw cards here for one life because of Gix. This is some major value here for Ashlizzle here in game number one.
Mhm. Electing not to crew the schooner.
More removal here is a cut down is off the top. Yes, we certainly see all the removal here, Ash, as we get to see a couple peeks here of Ash's graveyard as to what's happened so
Yeah,
far.
and I'll be honest, she called it when she said that's gonna be the strongest thing in her deck.
Yeah.
As soon as Olive put down some threats, they were removed, and unfortunately, Olive's kind of just been left with some smaller creatures now that are having a lot of trouble pushing through.
Yes, so here we go. Here we have the fairy mastermind off the top. Olive just wanting to end this game as soon as possible, trying to just get in there for damage. And Ash is still staring at the cut down as well as the schooner. Again, it's a big butt. Makes sense that Ash wanted to save that. And this is just providing this enormous wall here for Ash. Perfect for against aggro decks. However, that Gix, note the schooner will be saying goodbye here. And here
Don't be so
come
sure. That
no?
cut down coming out to take out the druid before it gets too big. And
I
that
see.
that will be game 1 in favor of
Wow,
Ashlizzle.
that was
And
wild.
yeah, that Ash did draw quite a bit of her removal, that she put in that deck. Um,
So
and yeah,
now, again, we see the barrages here in the sideboard here, but I'm getting the impression that there is a lot of love for double strike here in Olive's deck. We see a lot of big creatures, a lot of double strike, a lot of just trample abilities. We have the audacity there for drawing. There's a lot of different abilities here, and we're thinking, you're going first here if you're Olive. Do you tend to take a more aggressive strategy here, or do you kind of step back a little bit and maybe get some more of that removal, some more of that board control in here?
I if I'm in Olive's position, I think I would be swapping out some of those in the festivities in favor of at least a couple lithomantic barrages because
Mhm.
Ash does have a fair amount of blue creatures. I think I'd also be bringing in these Tyvar stands. It gives hexproof, and that's really what she struggled to in that first game was just having all of her creatures removed. So if Ash Lizzle can't remove those creatures, I think that would make a big difference in game 2 or potentially 3.
Now we're going over to Ashlizzle's side here, and there are some very interesting options that could throw that deck for a loop. Oh, and hey, look, there is more removal here. That is anoint and more cut downs in here. And let's see if Ash just wants to control the board here, especially going second here. Yep, there more cut downs, more annoyance, says Ash.
Yep. Yeah, those, the removal did so much for her in the first game, so I don't blame her for wanting to bring those in. Looks like she was bringing in some of those duresses as well.
Yes, duress is a card that you wouldn't think would be useful in an aggro matchup, but in a matchup like this where there's so many combat tricks, pretty good idea to take the duresses here.
Yeah, I mean, for no other reason than just taking a peek and seeing what Olive has in hand, that knowledge is just so valuable, knowing exactly which tricks. Oh, goodness. Did you see Olive's first hand?
Oh,
No lands at all.
but this is a pretty decent second draw here from Olive. So that is it's a lot of threat there on the board early. And then we have a one removal spell for Ash, and not too else much. We have the Malcolms. This would be a hand where you would want to see end the festivities here. Monster Swift Spear hits the board first, down the middle for one. Good start here for Olive.
It looks like Ash has not too bad of a start. Can take out that Swift Spear now. May try to wait, but nah, gonna go ahead and just take it out
Yeah.
while she can.
All right. No third mana source here for Olive to put down the forge here. So we're going to see what Ashlizzle does, assuming probably just going to be land go as a lot of blue base decks like to do here, especially with the Fairy Mastermind.
Yeah, the Fairy Mastermind and Malcolm both have Flash, so no reason to play it main phase. Just potentially Flash now, or looks like she's just gonna
Oh,
go ahead and say, "I'm gonna put the schooner out."
sure, why not? And that is a Kamado Faces Caucus on here off the top for Olive, opting to put it on the bottom, wants to see one more land. And there it is. Here comes what would likely be the Urabras Forge here. It's a very scary card to go into, as those tokens are going to keep getting bigger every turn.
Yeah, that forge I think is something that could really give Ash a run for her money because it's not something that those tokens aren't going to be something that she's going to want to spend her removal on. They just keep coming back. But as they progressively get larger, it's going to be more and more difficult for her to block. So getting that forge out this early is very, very strong for Olive.
All right, Cacophony Scamp here on the board, down the middle with the token. And we're seeing Malcolm probably not going to block here.
No, but can crew the schooner.
But can crew the schooner, absolutely.
So Ashlizzle's going to protect herself a little bit. However, Olive does have that monstrous rage that could take out the schooner, and I think that's actually probably the best bet for her right now because that schooner is just going to start to get incremental value and pumping Ashlizzle's team. So I think taking it out now is probably the best choice and a good use of the rage. Unfortunately, that token is not gonna survive, so I understand why she was a little hesitant to maybe use
Mhm.
it.
Yes. And no lands again from Ash's side, but Ash has more than enough going here, and there's a land off the top.
Yeah, Malcolm's ability being able to just kinda loot and then put, the counters on, it's very, very strong, especially when Ash has a deck that really needs to, just start looking for things.
All right, here comes the swing. Most likely gonna frenzy the preacher. Very difficult card to get rid of, preacher. So this is one of the cards that can do so.
Mhm. Olive's gonna go ahead or sorry, Ash is gonna go ahead and use that cut down on the token just to save some life.
Again, Ash treating this like a mono red matchup. We were talking about the similarities between this deck and mono red here. Makes sense.
Mhm. And that forge is gonna continue to get more and more counters on it, making it even more dangerous.
But we may have the friendly neighborhood big bat entering the field this turn. Let's see what happens here from the Malcolm draw.
Ash electing not to put the Mirrex down main phase just to see what she gets instead.
Hmm.
Deciding to keep it though, because I think, yeah, going straight into that 5 mana Aquazotz, you know, she really needs to get some lifelink. This mono red deck is ruthless, and knowing that the Urabrask's Forge is gonna make more and more things, she might be in a little bit of trouble.
All right. Looks like there potentially is going to be some life gain here with the scamp.
Would not be big enough to, yeah, to be able to take out the Aquazotz.
Oh, okay. So there will be some life gain here with the Aquazotz, but I don't know. This one's going to be close with that forge. That forge is just going to, as you said, I mean, should just keep getting bigger and bigger here.
Yeah, and with Aquazotz making Olive discard cards, it's gonna be a little bit tricky. She's gonna have to either play everything she draws or be at the mercy of having to discard it to Aquazotz, because I don't think Ashlizzle is gonna be holding back anytime soon. The
Mm-mm.
Aquazotz is her best way to gain the life back, and I don't think she's gonna try to, block and trade it off.
Going for the land here because again, there's many things to activate here with between the Mirex and the animated land here. 5-1 here.
Oh,
Just
electing to just take it. They're in a race, but right now I definitely think Ashlizzle is winning just because of just the sheer life gain.
yes, life gain just being such a powerful mechanic here as old as time, but just so strong. Preacher also going to be doing things here. Now we have just all these tokens being generated suddenly. And again, much like the last match, the deck that you expect to be the aggro deck is not really the aggro deck here.
Yeah, struggling a little bit with the mana, and then yeah, it just looked like a little bit of a struggle trying to get going.
There we go. There's the Tide Binder on the forge. No more tokens here.
Yeah,
And
that
that is going
Tidebinder being able to counter triggered abilities is extremely strong, especially when it's not just triggered abilities of creatures.
wow. So again, we see another case of just there's so much life gain going on, so much life gain, so much removal. And again, we expect to see these things from decks that have black in them. And then you have the blue for the support. But oh my gosh, Dimir just looking like a powerhouse here tonight, Misha.
Yeah.
And you again, when you're trying to build a deck based around aggro and you just keep having that life gain and that card draw, if you don't get the 20 right away, the 20 damage in as soon as possible, the game just falls away from you, especially with all these potent bats taking things out of hands.
Yeah, until that Aquazons came onto the battlefield, it definitely looked very much in Olive's favor. But as soon as you have a 4/4 with lifelink, it'll just start pulling away from you, and that's unfortunately what we saw. But a good game to both players. They played very good at, you know, lifelink. It'll get you.
Very much so. And what is it with bats and lifelink here? I didn't know they were vampire bats draining life. You know what I'm saying? Just something to
Vampire's
think
not on
about.
their card type.
Indeed. So we have even more VML action coming here as we roll into our third match. So now we get to see, and now for something entirely different here. This is Bant Toxic. That's right, Bant Toxic, something we've been seeing around standard quite a bit lately. Venerated Priest just being amazing. March of Swirling, Mist again. Very difficult card to work around. And then we have the Serum Snare here from Sarah's deck. And of course, it doesn't surprise me that the combo esque deck, even though this does look very aggro y, is coming from an Is It mage. Of course it is. So what are you thinking about this deck, Misha?
Um, it's what I'm always thinking when I think about toxic. It's much easier to count to 10 than it is to 20.
So here's another question here. Let's kind of go out more into the deck list proper. I've been seeing this every now and then, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. What do you think of the one of swords that have been popping up in the format? In my own personal match, I did see my opponent play a one of sword of Forge and Frontier. Here we have the sword of once and future. Is this just something to kind of catch the opponent off guard?
I feel like the swords are really a flex on hedging your bet on what you think your opponent's going to play that week.
So it's for the protection. Okay. Got it.
I at least that's my personal thought is that that is their, like, gamble on, "Is my opponent going to be on this particular deck that I might struggle with?" Like, our
Mhm.
last opponent played against our last we had 2 opponents in our last couple of games. Both of them played against Dimir decks that if you had protection from Dimir colors, that lifelink may not have been an integral factor. So I think that's just a smart, thing to put in there because these Dimir decks have been a bit oppressive, and it's not a bad bet to say, "If my opponent does select this particular deck, I might be safe."
I really like that insight here. And again, just ban toxic. It always has a horse in the race. I mean, again, as you said and said beautifully, it is much easier to count to 10 than to 20 here. And we're going to see if we count to 10 or 20, depending on which opponent prevails here. So her opponent, hey, look, it's mono red again. There we go. Mono red is back in here to stay here. And again, we have Isn't Mage versus Isn't Mage here. So that's pretty awesome here. So again, we have Nyxxborn here with some mono red goodness again. We have the Devastator in here, and we just have all of the wonderful staples here. We have a Thundering Maju in the sideboard. That's one we didn't get a chance to see quite yet. So a little bit of a different take on mono red here, as we do also see those Urbrass Forge make a reappearance.
Yeah, honestly, those forges, those can get real out of hand real fast. So I like that there's a 3 of in this deck. Everything else in this deck, however, seems to be aside from the charming scoundrels, looks pretty similar to a lot of the cards played in the mono red decks from last season. I mean, it's not broken, don't have to fix it, right? Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but yeah, no, I think this is a pretty good stocked mono red aggro deck. I think again, this is probably going to come down to the life link. This is the toxic deck is definitely hinging on getting at least 2 corrupted, and the Skrell's Hive can potentially gain some life back. So I think it might be an interesting matchup. Just to see who can count to 10 or 20 faster.
I like that being the theme of the match. This is the 10-20 matchup here. So here we go. Two very different aggressive decks here. We have Toxic, we have Mono Red. Let's see which one of the two aggressive decks will prevail here. And okay, so lands and spells, right? This is something we're always looking for, Risha.
Yeah, Nyxborn looks pretty solid. Phoenix Check, Lightning Strike, Bloodthirsty Adversary, the mana to play all of them, plus the Shivan Devastator for later game. I think Nyxborn's pretty set. The Seed Core, the Seed Core, it does not provide colored mana. By just kidding. If it's a Phyrexian, it does provide colored mana. I had to take a look at that.
It kind of does. If you're our friend Skrelv here, for instance, or Jawbone Duelist, or even the Annex Sentry, sure, it will be missing on the Hive if a white source is not found by turn 2, I guess, is when you would
Yeah,
wanna
I'm
have that out.
yeah, I was actually just taking a look at the deck list. There are no creatures in this deck that are not Phyrexians, so the C core is actually pretty darn good in
Yeah,
terms of creatures.
yeah, absolutely. So, decent hand here for both players here. Nyxxborn most likely going to go with the Saga here. Could be the Saga or the Chick here. Let's see. And again, I love it when players go into tank because again, they're kind of thinking it over. You don't see that as much from the aggro decks, but when you're here in the VML, again, anything can happen. So again, loving that thought, we're kind of getting into what the players can possibly do here. So again, what form of board position would Nyx like to establish first here? Probably considering the Kamano faces Kakasan here, and that is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I agree with this because if you play the Kamanos first, rather than the Phoenix chick, you're not really going to get a ton of value off of that 1/1 counter. Where now you can put that 1/1 counter on, say, the adversary if you wanted to play it early game, or you can put it on the Phoenix chick now, and then you have a 2/2 flyer. So I think I would have preferred to do the Kamano first and then put it on a Phoenix chick second.
All
But
right,
Sarah
let
is gonna get that venerated rot priest down. That was a real good draw for her.
Yes, and not only was the Rat Priest a good draw here, but now there's a decision for Nyx to be played. Nyx can either go for removal or it can go for the big creature because you only get one chance to do that with Kamano. Nyx opts for the big creature here, wanting that board presence here early in game number 1.
Yeah, that it's a tough choice because the sooner you can get that rot priest off the field, the better. But you don't want to miss out on the value from the Kamanos. So I think playing the 3/3 and just pushing in for damage and then potentially holding up that lightning strike for next turn. But now she also has to be a little bit careful because we know Sarah has these March of Swirling Mists to help protect that rot priest.
All right. So again, speaking of counting to 10 versus 20, that is 3 poison damage already on Nyx. So again, a little bit of a tighter counter here than what Nyx is used to again because of the poison damage here. Plenty of lands here for Nyx, which is both good and bad news. Going for what looks like is going to be Phoenix Chick here, keeping up the lightning strike. And
Yeah,
look, yes, good.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think just trying to press through that damage is the best move for Nyx because you can kind of, if I'm in Nyx's position, I'm kind of sussing out that Sarah's probably holding up at least one March of Swirling Mist to
Hmm.
protect that Rot Priest. So if she doesn't use it, well, she's gonna use it now. It kind of is just like 2 mana wasted. Um, but gonna elect to target these 3 creatures, get a few counters from the Rot Priest, and have a straight shot into Nyx's board, this next go around to get more poison counters.
Yes, and those poison counters multiply rather quickly here. Fortunately for Nyxborn, that lightning strike is still present. However, now we have a bit of a phasing here going on. Yet, no land draw, but the Rat Priest. Misha, how do you care, or how do you feel, rather, about having that second Rat Priest draw versus a land draw here?
I oh, It's great because if Nyx does elect to lightning strike the first Rot Priest, that's at least one more counter from the Rot Priest on the board, and then you have another one to replace it. And
Mhm.
you've baited out a spell and you're still getting poison. It's a really good pickup. I know Sarah really could use another land, but now with this other Rot Priest, I think it's going to really force Nyx to go ahead and strike the one that's on the board
Oh,
or allow it.
all right. All right.
Unfortunately, I think Nyx maybe should have,
Those face.
Okay.
Oh, okay, okay. Makes sense with the Devastator in hand here and more lands to go with that here. This is going to be suddenly a pretty tight game between both of these players here. Again, one counting to 10, one counting to 20, as you had anticipated, Misha. And I'm excited to see how game number one shakes out here. I don't know who clearly has the advantage here. This is
Yeah,
anybody got a calculator? I feel like that's what's needed here.
I'll be honest, I it didn't even occur to me Nyx would just go straight to face, but what am I thinking? That's what mono red does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when in doubt, go face, certainly.
Yeah, if I'm in Nyx's position, I think I go ahead and I slam that dragon, push through some more damage. Sarah only has that 1 mana, and if you're checking the stops, you can kinda tell that Sarah doesn't have an instant that can do anything with that 1 mana open. So I would just be pushing and, maybe keeping, yeah, the 2 bodies on the ground back. Honestly, if I'm Nyx, I'm just pushing those 2.
Yeah, this is lethal damage here, and again, those rat priests are gonna be pretty difficult to manage here, so interested to see what the blocking pattern's gonna look like here. Looking like Sarah's currently thinking about a double block on the backside of Kumano faces Kakazan, the 2/2. Yes. The etching of Kumano.
That is a very, very dangerous block to make, though, because that puts Sarah at 1 life.
Mhm. Very dangerous indeed, but something has to be blocked here. And how is this going to be done by Sarah?
Yeah, I would probably put 1 Rot Priest on the adversary to protect myself the most and, still keep as much on board as I can. It's gonna be very, very difficult, but this is gonna be very close.
Ooh, that
That
was a spicy card to draw.
Yes, I even said Serum Snare was going to be a card to look out for in this game, and this is why
Wow.
the targeting and the proliferate together gets you to 10. Wow.
Wow. I cannot believe that. What an exciting game here as we head into game two. And oh my gosh, like, again, very important to do math. We were talking about math. I was joking about a calculator earlier, but yeah, like that math had to be absolutely precise there for Bant Toxic, and just I am in shock right now as to how the end of that unfolded.
Yeah, I knew that, there were some outs. Sarah really was struggling with that mana, only getting the 2 that whole game, but, again, when you only have to count to 10, it sometimes make things a little bit easier.
Yes, and we do see a key card here against Mono Red in the deck, Knockout Blow. That is a card you do not want to see main or side if you are the Mono Red player, because that card is just so devastating on what Mono Red tries to do best, and that is just go to face.
Mhm, that life gain and the taking out a creature, very, very strong, especially at the discount.
But yes, so no need for the sword here. Serum Snare, of course, Serum Snare is going to stay in here. Now we head over to the mono red side here, and you're looking at your deck and you're just like, okay, how do I prevent something like that happening again? Going first. And if you're in the position of mono red, what exactly needs to be done here to secure game number two?
Um, you just gotta get that damage pushed through. That was such a close game. It really could have gone either way. That is a
Absolutely.
very strong hand for Nyxxborn. Tons of one drops, multiple or at least the one mentor and multiple ways to
Hmm.
give it prowess.
So still a hand for Sarah here. Again, has most of the lands that you need here. As Misha was talking about before, Seed Core here being really good can get the Rot Priest onto the field early. Down the middle, the Monetary Swift Sphere, 1 damage, standard beginning of a game here for Mono Red versus Toxic.
Yep. The second one, this is pretty good for Nyx. They can put out the Phoenix, they can play with fire to the face, they can get the Monastery Mint Swift Spear. not Mentor, haha. They get that Monastery Swift Sphere prowess trigger. I'm still, reeling from the Monastery Mentor last week, where it was just a combo making tons of monks with prowess. Ooh, that
Oh,
was a
yeah.
lot.
So we have a second Raw Priest here, and again, have the Snare and the Sentry here. As for Nyx, are we going to see the Urbrass Forge? Yes, we are.
Yes. The earlier you play that forge, the better it becomes.
And there we go down the middle here, already at 13 to, we'll call it 1 poison damage for Sarah so far, because again, poison is what we're watching on behalf of the Bant Toxic. And Sentry here going for the Forge.
Yeah, that's that forge is only going to keep growing and putting more and more obstacles on the board for Sarah to overcome. So taking that with the Annex Sentry, I think that was definitely the move. Still going to struggle a little bit with the Phoenix Chick, the Monastery Mentor, especially when we know there's a lightning strike. I don't think Nyx is going to be too worried, even if that Sentry does become a bit of a blocker problem. Um, you could technically strike it to get it out of the way and get your forge back. I think that's what I would do because that forge is just so instrumental to getting more and more creatures on the field each turn. But I think there's also an argument to be made to keep that lightning strike in case you need that last 3 damage to face.
Yeah. And on top of that, I mean, that was going to be Nyx's key win condition there, was the Forge. So now we get to see how Sarah, excuse me, deals with having that forge out of the way and how Nyx deals with the absence of the forge here. No going down the middle here. Again, that foundry, which I was talking about before, the animated land, again, that is a 2/2 that can come into play. Got to be very careful here, especially when you have something like lightning strike here. And Nyx is going for face here, going for face.
Mhm. And I'm looking over at the deck list and there were 3 Urbrass Forge main board, there were none in the sideboard, so,
Mhm.
Nyxxborn does still have 2 more in the deck. Oh, drawing that Soakins in, that's a couple of hasters, so if Sarah does decide to get a little bit, aggressive, that could be kind of punishing for her.
Yes, so chick down the middle here, and now what Sarah's left to think about that serum snare gun. It did save her in the first game. Will it save her here?
Right now, it's a little tricky because Sarah's a little bit behind, only with 2 poison. At this time of the last game, I think we are much higher on the poison count. So the serum snare, if if Nyx was going for targeted removal of creatures, I think it's great, but right now it's gonna be a little hard.
All right, well, something indeed has to be done here. So serum snare for the swift spear. Now remember, swift spear does have haste, so that's not too terrible for Nyxborn to have here. And speaking of the need for creatures here, we do have a Mirax here. That is a Mirax that hits the board pretty big right now, considering that there is all that land available for Sarah here. And now Nyx is looking at Sokanzan here.
Yeah, that Soken can channel, and I believe it makes 2 little, spirits. Yes,
Mhm.
2 hasty spirits that can block that crawling chorus, prevent even more poison counters. Um
Or can it? That is the
No.
second ability of Seed Cord there, making the chorus stronger. There's you know what? I gotta let y'all know this. There's a lot of text on these cards. And I know you're probably like, Sky, no, there is a lot of text on these cards, and it's really easy to miss that. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's the corrupted ability. That was the main reason for Sarah to get that serum snare up and get that poison counter up to 3, was so that the seed core second corrupted ability could be activated. It's funny, that only works on target 1/1s. I think it was written that way specifically for it to target the mites, but a
Mhm.
1/1 crawling chorus, that'll do it too.
That certainly does. So now adversary enters play, ability activates, and Nyx now gets to choose a instant or sorcery. Probably going to be This is tough. This is
I
tough.
think I'd wanna do the play with fire, you
Yeah.
directly to face, and get that scry, see what's gonna come next. Because if it's another land, I don't want that, I'm gonna put that on the bottom. Ooh, it's a Phoenix chick, so another attacker in the air to potentially push through that last bits of damage.
Yes, and again, we've been talking about big butts all day. 4 seems to be the magic number so far today for big butts. We saw it with Preacher, now we're seeing it with Annex Sentry here, as it is saving Sarah quite a bit of damage. And looks like it's gonna be Phoenix Chick to face, down to 4 for Sarah, and that is another land off the top for her.
Mhm. This Smite attacking alone, now Nyxxborn is and I myself am also now very acutely aware of Seedcore's second ability. Not gonna probably make, any blocks again on that, just gonna let that 1/1 come through. When you're only at 4 poison, I feel a little bit more comfortable being able to take, a couple more hits, but, ooh, this dragon, I think this is
Yeah.
what's gonna seal the deal.
Yes, again, being a very key card here in the matchup for Manner, Shiv and Devastator off the top, and that is going to be it for game number 2. Very exciting exchange between these 2 decks so far. So again, these were both relatively last minute victories. Number 1 was a little tighter, but still the Devastator off the top was about as big, if not bigger, than the snare for Sarah here. So just ridiculous games here going into game number 3. It is truly anybody's game here.
Mhm. Yeah, I really feel like both of these decks are aggressive in different ways. One is aggressive to just your life total, and the other is just how aggressive can you get with like putting poison counters. And a lot of it really depends on what your opening hand and curve look like. That one, I definitely was a very strong opening hand for Nyxborn the first go around. It was a little tricky with only doing 2 mana, but it was ended up being a very strong hand for Sarah. We just saw Sarah mulligan that first hand with only a Merrick's, not being able to play basically any card in her deck off of just a Merrick's. Nyxborn, this is a little bit better. You got a Kumano on 1, Phoenix Chick on 2, and a Lightning Strike in hand, and a potential Sokenzin to channel away. Not a bad start for Nyxborn.
No, this is not a terrible start now, considering the second hand, especially considering what the seed core does. Again, seed core coming up big for Sarah as a land here, because again, with otherwise it wouldn't be that great. But again, seed core being great here, knockout blow perhaps going to the bottom, and the annex sentry here. It's a decent 5, honestly.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little tricky because, like we talked about earlier, Seed Core can play mana or colored mana for Phyrexians, but that Hive is not a Phyrexian, and now we have double Hive over on Sarah's side. So,
The other
oh,
difficult thing about the hive here is it does cost life, and that is something that while Sarah has more of per se, it's still going to help out Nyxborn. So we're going to see if Nyxborn can capitalize on that. Foundry coming down as the second card and looking like a Phoenix chick getting powered up by Kumano faces Kakazan in for 2. Sarah down to 16 now with the hive doing its thing. But this field is multiplying very quickly for Sarah.
mhm. And that Mirrex being able to play that one Hive was great. I always forget that Mirrex can pay a single colored mana only if it's entered the battlefield. All of these cards have so much text on them, hard to remember.
Oh, that doesn't end the festivities though for Nyx, which is going to be devastating to Sarah's board. And that gets exiled, meaning that the chorus will not receive an additional might after dying because of the exile ability. That is big for Nyxborn and the field and the board state right now.
This is where it gets a little tricky because that venerated rot priest, um, it oh, it getting targeted now gives Nyxborn corrupted, which if it Nyxborn was not corrupted, those mites would not have lifelink.
Yes, and it gives, I believe, any card with toxic lifelink, I believe. So that is going to play a little bit of a factor here. However, is that too little too late? We see two Sokenzans and a Squee in Nyx's hands. So it's going to be that race, right, against the lifelink. And we were talking about how good the lifelink is here. But yeah, it says creatures you control with toxic have lifelink on the hive. So yeah, this is still very much a game for Sarah. Sarah just needs to either procure some blue mana, maybe get out the second hive here. This is going to be a pretty tricky game overall.
Yeah, because this is very scary. If Sarah does not block here, she goes down to 6. Then Nyxxborn could gain at least a little bit of life back off of the might because you can activate the seed core, pump it up, and gain 3 life. Um, it's going to be really a really tricky game to navigate though because Nyxborn is still pushing lots and lots of damage.
Pushing lots of damage, and also the hive does deduct one life every turn. So essentially, right now, given the board state, Sarah's life is at 9 right now, and you have to configure that math in every turn. It is going to be minus one life, as I was talking about from the beginning of this match. Great card, good job for giving lifelink, but also complicates this matchup against mono red.
Yeah, it's like that bitter blossom math.
Yes, very much so. Unfortunately, another blue card here for Sarah, and Nyxborn is going to go Sokenzan here. And again, I think we are going to see some action from the seed core.
Yep. Nyxborn electing, it looks like only to block with one of those spirits. That seed core will get pumped and that might will not die because of it. And Sarah is back up to 8, but once that hive goes off, it'll be 7 effectively.
And that is another foundry off the top for Nyx, but there is a Squee and there's a Sokenzan. And again, Sokenzan feeds off of legendary creatures, that which Squee is. So there's likely going to be some interaction between the two. This is going to be pretty wide for Nyx. And again, with Sarah being only at 8 life and Nyx only being with 3 poison, there's not much really that Nyx has to lose here.
Yeah, Nyx is gonna go all in, gonna get that extra goblin. Sarah can gain 1 life back off of the venerated rock priest, but that's gonna be what, 2, 4, 6, 7 damage? It's gonna be very close. Sarah's gonna go down very low this go around.
Yes, and this is Sarah banking on that there's not a play with fire in Nyx's hand as well.
Mhm.
And both players doing math. Wow.
Yep. Sarah at 1 HP in a dream when it comes back to her turn.
All right. There is a dream still. That is a coast off the top, and that makes some of Sarah's hand live right now, if not all of it. The hive probably not seeing as much, but the fading hope and the march. Wow. There are some potential here going on, some possibilities.
Yeah,
Ooh.
this is gonna be scary
Yeah,
'cause,
this yeah. Oh my
I'm
god.
afraid. It looks like Sarah's trying to do the math of what's on board, those boundaries that can be potentially activated, um,
Wow.
just trying to see what exactly can she do to survive.
What is going on right now?
But this looks like it's enough to get the toxic win.
Yes! Exactsies.
And that just demonstrates the power of the venerated rot priest. Sarah or Nyx was only at 3, 3 attacks, and then the targeting, this is what, 7 toxic in just 1 turn?
What a game, though. What a game to feel. All three of these games were solid for both players. I just want to say Thank you to Nyx and Sarah for providing us with one heck of a match. Oh my goodness, that is one of my favorite matches I've seen in a while. Two aggro decks with two different win conditions just clashing face to face and just so suspenseful throughout all three games. That was a real treat to see that. Thank you to both players.
Yeah, it kept me on the edge of my seat. I'm over here in the tank doing my own math. I'm like, "Oh gosh, who's on the back end now?" That was great job, both players.
Well, now I think we will all want to take a little bit of a chill break here after the intensity of that match. And we are going to go to our feature match. And first, we're going to have an interview with Katie Karlov. Take it away.
Hi, welcome back. We are interviewing this week Katie Karlov. Katie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Now, this is your first VML, is that correct?
Yes, my first one.
How has your experience been so far? I know we're only in week 2, but how have you liked it?
Um, First week has been super great. I mean, I was like so nervous leading up to it, and so I'm super like excited to finally like be in it now and it's feeling real and the cadence of things is kind of fun. It's yeah, it's been great so far.
That's great. Now, you are bringing a pretty interesting deck the first week and also this week. You've got a Gruul Dinosaurs deck, which I think looks very cool, very exciting. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I wanted to build a more aggro kind of Gruul deck. That's generally when I play limited, that's kind of the archetype I go for if I can pull it off. So playing Gruul in standard was something I wanted to do because it's my play style and it's fun for me to kind of play the pilot the deck. So including dinosaurs was just another fun thing because I also like big giant splashy creatures. And so that was kind of the idea of what birthed the deck. And then from there, it was just making sure that I had like a lot of different ways to win with it, that I wasn't relying too heavy on like one thing, and that the deck could, perform well and move quickly. That was the main thing. Just go fast, do damage.
Yeah, well, Gruul definitely has a lot of that in standard right now. I think it's really cool to see someone bringing a deck like this into the VML. Now, tell us a little bit about your Magic background. Like, what do you mostly play? How long have you been playing? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I started playing Magic over 10 years ago, and I was playing like 60 card kitchen table Magic, which if you really think about it, it was standard because it was just whatever the newest set was. I was making a little deck out of it. So I was doing that originally, and then a few years ago, maybe almost 3 years ago now, we got into Commander, and so that's kind of been my primary format for a while. And since kind of doing that, we've started playing Standard again. I started playing Pioneer because I thought that format was interesting. And I also play CEDH too because I don't know, I'm kind of in this mood now where I want to compete more and like challenge myself as a player. And so that's kind of the journey that I'm on right now.
Yeah, that's incredible. How have you felt, like, mostly coming from more of an EDH background, getting more into the competitive formats?
I felt really welcomed. I feel like I knew a few people that were already doing competitive play in all of those areas, and so I felt like I always had a channel to go to of like help me out, like explain to me this, like teach me, and everybody has just been so kind and so nice. And I mean, especially, and it's only been 1 week so far, but competing in the VML, the support that the VML gives you to like ask questions and play test and do all of that has been so cool to see. And it's just really invigorated me into this format, and definitely made me want to also be able to in the future be that for somebody else as well. So I think it's been really super fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that really touches on why stuff like the VML is important and why having this
Mhm.
sort of visibility and representation matters a lot in the space. So we've talked a bit about your history. Let's talk about the match at hand. So you are obviously bringing your Dinosaurs Brew. Tell us what you're up
Mhm.
against and how are you feeling about the matchup?
So my opponent this week is playing Dimir Midrange, which is something my deck struggles with because I'm very low to the ground. But I'm just hopeful that I can get in quickly and kind of just smack in with a bunch of big creatures early on. Trying to make sure I mulligan correctly and get like a good mana dork so I can kind of squeeze out a dinosaur on turn 2. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of decks are going to struggle against the mid range decks, especially if they end up hitting the parts of their deck that line up well against the parts of your deck. But, like you said, if you can get low to the ground, you can get under them. I mean, if you can do the aggro thing, you can
Yeah.
definitely get there. Now, we know next week is the first week that the murders at Karlov Manor is legal. What are your thoughts about that? Are you thinking you might stick with the dinosaurs? Do you want to keep it a well guarded secret so your next week opponent doesn't know?
It's a well guarded secret even from me. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet. I don't know. Part of me is thinking it would be good to definitely tweak some things and kind of maybe I've been kind of playing around with the idea of throwing in white into my deck so that I have a little bit more options for removal. Maybe I'll completely change colors altogether. I'm not actually sure yet. But I think that having Karlov come out will make it a little bit of a challenge for me to, I think, stick with exactly how my deck is now. So I probably will tweak it, if anything, just a little bit.
Sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Katie, I wish you a lot of luck in this upcoming match and in the rest of your VML matches. We're going to get back to the coverage. Thank you for talking to me. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Katie and Niall, two fantastic people. We were actually talking about them, both of them, during the interview, and just again, I really would love to meet both of them. Misha, you have anything you'd like to say to either Katie or Niall?
I've met both of them. They're both wonderful people, and I think I'm gonna see them both again at Chicago very soon. So if you're going to Chicago, come meet Katie and Niall. We're gonna be at the VML Bop crossover joint collaboration table. I'm sure they'd be happy to meet you as well.
And speaking of Katie, I believe we do have a feature match featuring her. So let's go on over to our final match of the night, the big old feature match. This is Katie. Also, I love the hair, Katie. I'm sorry. I had to step out of character for a second. I love the hair. Absolutely. So, again, this is Gruul Dinos. Again, I absolutely love Gruul. This was one of the things that motivated me to pick this matchup here. And we have just all of the dinosaurs that you would possibly want to go for. So again, let's take a look at the lineup here. We all, of course, have Atali, Primal Conquer, Bone Horde, Dracosaur. I had to say Dracosaur instead of dinosaur here because that's easy to say. See that, and just oh my goodness. So many big old dinos here. Thrashing Bronodon, a classic. And we see two forges in the sideboard again. What is it with Forge tonight? So, overall impressions of this deck, Misha.
It's it's Gruul, it's aggro, and it's dinos. I mean, what else is there to say? I'm I'm really excited. I have not seen a Gruul Dinos deck. Um, I have not seen many of them submitted, so it makes me very happy that Katie decided to choose this one. Some of the choices I picked for cards to watch are the Triumphant Chomp. I think that's going to be a good removal piece because it's 2 damage minimum, potentially more. If you're playing Dinos, it's usually going to be more. Also, the Belligerent Yearling. That's a little guy with trample, but whenever you have other dinos come in, it can, replace its power with that other dino's power. That coupled with 4 pugnacious hammer skulls main board, that little yearling can punch through for a lot of damage potentially for a 2/2. So I think those are going to be some interesting cards to watch in this. And then you got your lore keepers to ramp you to some of your higher end dinos.
One final thing before we go to the slide. Now, y'all can't see it, but Katie did name this deck Gruels. And I'll tell you something, there's nothing like a good pun, especially in Magic the Gathering. All right, let's take a look at her opponent as well. And we are back with Dimir Midrange. Here we have the lovely Go for the Throat. There's the bat. We can't get away from the bats. The bats are just everywhere. We have been infested with the bats in standard, and that's probably not going away anytime soon, y'all. Especially with the new set coming out. I'm sure we're going to see them even more. We have a bunch of the classics here. We have Gix, which is seeing more play than I thought it would. Malcolm, which I expected to see. And again, here come the schooners, and I swear these are being played, so we're trying to be as specific enough with the pronunciation here. Overall, how do you feel about this flavor of Demir mid range, Misha?
This one looks pretty similar to the other ones. Maybe like a one less preacher, one less tidebinder, some more sirens. I think this one is just going a little bit heavier on the ones and two drops to push through damage in the air, which I think that's okay. I think getting some stuff out there, getting some maps, growing some things, potentially growing your bats. I think that's really strong. The Gixes really do a lot of value with all of the flyers pushing through damage. Being able to have the Gix out and pay the one life to draw the card, it's just a ton of card advantage, especially with the schooners. If you're able to push the schooner through, that's really great. Explore is just so good. I think that was probably one of my favorite things to come back with LCI is just the explore mechanic. I think a lot of people just love it or hate it. I'm on team love it.
Aw, I like Explorer's best friend, Discover, personally, but I'm a big fan of both of them. All right, let's go into our matchup here. This is our final match before Murders enters the VML stage. And here we go. And we have a lot of lands. We have a lot of lands here, Misha.
Yeah, I saw that Katie's first one, a Dracosaur and a Soul Cauldron. Probably not what you want to start off with when
No.
you're aggro. So yeah, Katie went ahead and molded that. Over on January's side, that's pretty good. You got a bat in hand, a schooner, and a go for the throat. I don't think I'd be asking for much more.
No, absolutely not here. So again, Cavern of Souls for Who Guessed Dinosaurs. And here we're going to see this little baby dino enter the field. No effect, no other dinosaurs on the field, but it does get across the middle for two. And that is a fantastic start here. But here comes the Deep Cavern Bat themselves.
Oh, this is friggin' bats.
More bats than the decade where all the Dark Knight movies came
Oh man, the bat infestation continues.
All right, so this is a card I actually wanted to talk about a little bit more here. This is the Huntsman's Redemption here, coming out of Eldraine. Of course, it's fairy tale based. Hitting the field here, we have our 3/3 beast and the dino coming through for an additional two. Misho, how do you feel about Huntsman's Redemption? Any impressions about that or any impact it might make on this match?
I won't lie, I hadn't really seen a lot of play for this card, so it was one I had to look up. I'm just a big fan of sagas. Getting 3 different effects in one card, that's really good, especially when this is only a 3 mana card to play. You get a 3/3 beast on the first, uh, chapter, then you can sacrifice a creature and search your library for a creature or basic land card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then
Ooh.
shuffle. Um so, I mean, sacrifice that 3/3 and go get something else, not bad. Not bad at
It
all.
It is worth noting that the card to watch for right now, Cavern of Souls, which again is significant because we do see that Urtai resurrected in January's hand right now. The Urtai can destroy it once it's hit the field, but it can't exactly counter it. That could be big down the line for if we see some enter the battlefield effects here. Down the middle with the little dino for two again. But there is a schooner here, and that schooner will be crewed here and says, not this time.
Yeah, I think that might have been just an accident. It's always sometimes difficult to remember, when you have vehicles and they can be crewed, especially since schooner can crew for just 1. That's a
Mhm.
pretty big boat for such a little bat to drive.
Indeed. So now we have Huntsman's Redemption here, going to pump up this huge dinosaur. However, this cheap 6/6 does come with a drawback here, and we're going to see that drawback. While this Dracosaur will be able to enter the field and not be countered by Urtai, there's a lot of removal here present in January's hand. January and Ash shaking hands tonight on that removal. So here we go. The Hammer Skull likely going to go down the middle here.
Yep. Now that there is another dinosaur on the field, it will not get stunned. However, we have this go for the throat, and that can take out that
Hmm.
8/8. And I January elected to do it this way and then flash in the Malcolm because next turn that Urtai can potentially just take out the Dracosaur, giving a clear path for the team to swing in.
Yes, the only drawback of the Urtai is, oh, I was just going to talk about big dinos being able to be drawn. However, this is a big swing here. And again, we have that reversal of expectation here. We expect the dinos to be stompy, but it's not the dinosaurs right now being stompy. It is just this huge squadron of pirates and ships and bats. Oh my.
Yes. Ooh, this is a little interesting. You got Agatha's Soul Cauldron coming out. The Triumphant Chop can take out either the Bat or the Malcolm. I think at this point it's probably the Bat for me, so I can get back. But I'm gonna go potentially look at the Malcolm so that I'm not gonna be able to get the looting.
Looks like Katie really wants the card back, but that Malcolm is really scary. This is a very difficult decision overall. I do not blame Katie for taking her time here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's definitely worth a thought on which one. Also, there's potential that you wanna do it now rather than waiting for well, 1, it's just a sorcery. Um, if you if you're thinking about it, you wanna take out either the Malcolm or the Bat because, that Urtai is gonna get in for damage, but one of those 2, if January didn't have any creatures, might be used to crew the schooner. However, January does have some creatures. That schooner can just fly in or sail in, I guess it's a boat, not a ship, not an
Some
airship.
creatures, like
Yep.
children.
Yep, just some normal creatures.
Down the middle again. This is just a relentless aggro setup here. And remember that Katie is going to take two off the top here to begin her turn. And that's going to be it, most likely, just because there's the 2 mana right here. Let's see what happens with the Soul Cauldron.
Yeah, I'm gonna tap it, but that
Yeah,
will be game. Sholdred taking that down for January in game 1.
well played and executed game by January. Everything was very calculated. And again, it was a mid range deck. But in a mid range deck, remember, it can be aggro, it can be control, it can be mid. Mid range decks can literally do it all as indicated by the name. And there, January was very good at assessing the role. Well, am I going to be aggressive? Am I going to control the field? And there was a little bit of column A and column B there. January just brilliantly executing that game. However, we are going to see likely a little more of this Gruul deck as Katie does get to go first here in game number 2.
Yeah, Katie's putting in those Scythe Claw Raptors, which I think is a great choice because a lot of what January is trying to do is cast spells, removal spells, instant speed, flash in those Urtais. So any of those Raptors that can just do that damage and punish them, or for Katie to punish January, I think that's very important. That way, do they play it and take the damage, or do they do it on their own turn and then give me a little bit more insight to what they're thinking? And just being able to make better choices because the Raptors out there, it's very helpful for the aggro deck.
I still, if you ever want to tell us January what's going on, I see it in the deck title here. It says I burned my fingertips off. I feel like there's some lore here. I feel like there's some lore. I'm not sure what that refers to, but I wanted to draw attention to that because that was something I noticed earlier.
Yes, please type it in the chat if you have answers.
I always just like to know player lore, like what's going on with this, Everyone, one of the things I love about VML is there's always like a name right? There's always like, "Oh, it deals with murders. Okay, thank you. We did receive an answer. They will not find her." Okay. I that does actually make sense, especially within the confines of our new set coming out, Murders at Karlov Manner, which again, there's a great story there with Katie as well, dealing with that. We were talking about that. But we'll talk about lore later. We're going into game number 2 here. Pretty acceptable hands from both players here. This should be a good one.
I agree. We see those bats again, that deep cavern back in hand. There's always bats all the time. Katie over here has more than a couple good two drops. The yearling. I personally just love this little 3/2. It's a little 3/2 a
Aw,
trample.
it's so cute.
I am interested to see if January is gonna go ahead and just, yep, gonna snap that
Yes.
bat.
Yes. Here comes the bats again.
If I'm January here, and I'm looking at Katie's hand, I
Mhm.
see that there's that Atali, but the Atali's still a little ways off.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I'm going ahead and taking that paleontologist.
Yep, and that is the source of ramp too. However, that Kumano faces Kagazan's looking pretty alluring right now. But I think we're going to get some help onto the board state here. And
Yeah.
sure, why not make full use of the mana here with Kumano? Even if it doesn't see the chapter 2 play, it's certainly not terrible, but it looks like we may see an attack down the middle first. There we go. And we're gonna discard it. We're gonna discard it. We are. Ooh, I like that. That's pretty juicy play there. And
Oh, and
oh
would you
my
look at
goodness.
that? That
Wow.
chomp could take out that bat, and we get our card back. Value.
All right. So again, oh my good. I told y'all you can't get rid of the bats. You cannot get rid of the bats here. That is another deep cavern bat off the top.
There is, but I think there might be an argument to be made to hold up the Tidebinder so you can flash it out and
Mhm.
take away that triggered Inti ability.
Certainly, and again, those red eyeballs on Katie's hand indicates that January can see the hand. So January does have complete knowledge here of what to do here. We can either have a bat heist or we can have a tide binder stop here. Either play pretty strong here for January beginning game number 2 here.
Yeah, I if I'm January and I already know what's in Katie's hand, I think I'm less inclined to play the bat. I think I'd want to wait a little bit until
Oh.
until there's a little bit more of a mystery of what Katie's got going on.
Is there a mystery though? Is there a mystery?
Well, I mean, what's better than first Atali? Oh yeah, that's second Atali.
And I believe that is a tally 2 of 2. Let me take a look at the sideboard again real quick. Yeah, that is 2 of 2 of a tally. So, you can't get more a tally than this as Katie has in this hand.
Mhm. January electing to flash out the Tishana's Hideminer and, like I thought, counter that Inti ability. That way we're not getting the 1/1 counters, we're not getting the looting, and it looks like just gonna go ahead and trade the Yearling for the Tidebinder.
Really good play here overall by January again. Although, this is still quite the situation here. All Katie has to do is find just a little more lands, and those Atalis are just going to go off, and they are going to go off with a bang.
Yes, when when they go off, they will. Katie has the ability. She doesn't have to do it right now, but she can pay the 2 mana. She can exile that yearling, and then she can play it next turn. That's one of the
Mhm.
really neat things that the paleontologist lets you do is that you can just exile and bring it back if it's a dino.
I wish I could see the look on January's face here when this hand is revealed. I mean, you can't help but wonder.
Yes, what's better than first bat? Second bat. What's better than first Atali? Second Atali.
Seeing a lot of duplicates here. And I think the paleontologist is just going to do as you describe here, Misha. I believe we are going to see a play of sorts happening here. As you know, we don't even know if we're going to have something playable. Ideally, Katie might want lands here, as odd as that sounds in this predicament.
Yeah, if I'm Katie, I think I'm just trying to get all the way up to that Atali mana. That paleontologist can tap
Ooh.
for mana.
That's
That's
interesting.
yeah, oh, that paleontologist. Yep, it can still tap,
Yep.
and we get double spelling this turn. So we get a yearling out and we get a beast.
Yes, but I do not believe there's gonna be a probably maybe wants to loot here, we'll see.
Yeah, that schooner can crew, but gonna go
Hmm.
ahead and potentially discard the Atali away, looking for something else. This is
Perhaps. Hmm. Let's see what happens here. I'm telling you, those schooners will sneak up on you.
yeah, those big old boats are sneaky.
Bats and boats, right? I believe that was the name of
Yeah,
Ash's
we had
plan.
a bats and boats deck earlier.
Well, here's a bat and here's a boat. That's not too far removed here. Off the top, that is a Mirax, another very interesting draw here for January. We do have a Takanuma also. So let's see, going for the map here, and that is
Alright,
a
we see
fairy mastermind.
let's see if January wants to keep that on top or put it in the graveyard. Going to go ahead and put it in the graveyard.
It's a tough situation, really, for both players, right? Like January has the big butt, that's the schooner, but January also knows about the Atali, potentially second Atali here, goes down the middle with both
Yeah.
of them, probably just wanting to draw that card and again, or explore rather. And that is a good thing because January is getting a little waterlogged right now.
Mhm. Take a look at this. Change
Oh,
the equation.
another belligerent yearling off the top here. And what is Katie going to go for this time? Looking at the Dracosaur again, which can be played this turn. The question is Katie going to play that potentially into a counter spell?
I ooh, it's a difficult one because right now Katie could play the Dracosaur, but we do know, these are open deck lists, so there is that one change the equation. There's also a couple of disdainful strokes that,
Yep.
January could have brought in. So it's tricky. Do you play out that bone horde that, is also just common knowledge? You see the eyeball and potentially just get that counterspell out of the way. And it looks like
Yep.
that's what Katie's gonna do.
Yep, without the Cavernous Souls here, that changed the equation, certainly changes the game up there and then some. So, right here, Katie going down the middle here, down to 10. But remember, that bat's lifelink, those numbers add up very quickly. And that is a go for the throat off the top for January, which again, fantastic card in this situation here. January only has to hold off a few more turns, and January will have this game. We'll see, though. It's going to be tough.
Yep. There is also something to be said that paleontologist does have the ability to pay two. You can exile that Dracosaur, play it the next turn when you get some more mana. Because we're still a little ways off from the Holly mana, but we're not that far off from Dracosaur again, mana again. So we could just play the Yearling um, and just hold up two mana.
Loved, by the way, absolutely loved the Mirax into the schooner play there. That was a big play for January, and just kudos for that.
Mhm. Using
All
that
right,
1/1 might to crew. Ugh, so good.
go for the throat here for the Voldaran Thrill Seeker. Is this going to be it? This is going to be close.
Mhm. That Thrill Seeker can potentially block the schooner, so there's still a chance, but it's looking a little rough.
Yeah, and again, what are we seeing here? The bat and the lifelink. I mean, even 1+1+1 counter, Misha, and that bat is just so devastating. And that is a Gix off the top. As Katie says, oh, dang, good game. That is a really tough card to compete against.
Yeah,
And
I think there
yeah,
was a potential, where the what is it? The Thrill Seeker could have blocked with the Thrill Seeker and then sacked it to do a damage in the air to maybe hold on one more turn. But it was rough. Both players did a great job.
Yeah, that game was just again, there were so many different ways in which it could have gone either way, but the dinos had to have been warded off. I mean, if any of those Italis hit the field, it's a game over. That game is more about the board state than the numbers if you're in the position of Katie and Girl Dinos.
Yeah, we unfortunately there was just so much removal for those dinos, be it in the form of just targeted removal or counter spells, that it was just really hard to build that board state and to get past that schooner. That schooner really was the MVP in that game.
Absolutely. So that does wrap up our matches this week. And again, we would love to thank all of the players here participating in the VML, giving us this opportunity to view these great games. Misha, I want to thank you also for casting with me. So, how can we find you on the internet?
I am at magic_Mishamigo on most social medias. So if you want to find me, just look me up and I'm probably there.
Yes, I am also at Skybilz at most places on the internet. You'll most likely find me on Twitch, which I'm there most nights doing some speedrunning stuff, and also retro achievements. I occasionally do magic there, but as folks have been uncovering, by the way, did you know you could speedrun magic? Arena, like this is a thing now that apparently has come up on speedrun.com. Yeah.
I I
So
know that
I
I knew that Niall's Bat Heist was now part of speedrun.com, but there's another magic category?
I mean, I think there's plenty of arena categories on there, which was fascinating. Y'all should check that out on speedrun.com. But yeah, I've had people asking me about it all week because I am one of the links between magic and speedrunning. So naturally, I've had people ask all sorts of interesting questions towards that. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that unfolds as well, especially participants from the VML community in general, very interested in that endeavor. So that was pretty awesome to see. I want to make sure that we thank, of course, Wizards of the Coast. You all are great. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And thank you for supporting us here at VML. I want to thank Phoebe. We could not do any of this without Phoebe behind the scenes. So thank you, Phoebe. Much love. Please be sure to give Phoebe a follow also on literally all the social media platforms. Our wonderful administrative team, which again, we could not do this without everyone. Misha, thank you so much again for working on all of the back end work as well too. Without that, we would also not be here. Of course, to all of our wonderful players at the VML, again, filling up the 128 in about an hour or so. Like y'all rock. Thank you so much for supporting the community. And of course, to our lovely viewers in chat, thank you so much for checking us out. We really appreciate y'all attending the cast here. And I believe that's going to do it this week. We will have week number 3 coming up next week. How will murders configure into the VML deck list next week? You'll find out here on the Venus and Mercury League next week. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.